In the world of professional blade work, there is a sharp divide between self-defense and blade mastery. The Israeli trainer, Ari Ben-Zvi, was a former Krav Maga instructor for elite security details, a man who viewed knife combat as a series of linear, aggressive disarms and brutal efficiency. He operated on the principle of burst countering, stopping an attack with maximum violence and immediately neutralizing the threat. During an international tactical seminar in Manila, Ben-Zvi stood before a group of local practitioners and openly mocked the circular flowing movements of Filipino martial arts, FMA. He called the intricate stick and knife patterns ballroom dancing with blades, claiming that in a real street fight, the flow would be crushed by the force of a direct Israeli counterstrike. He challenged any practitioner to a pressure test duel, confident that his linear defense would expose the Filipinos as performers rather than fighters. The man who stepped forward was Guro Elias Tapias Banal, a quiet, unassuming practitioner from the Visayas. Guro Elias didn't look like an elite operator. He wore simple training gear and carried a pair of dull training karambits. He didn't argue with Ben-Zvi's insults. Instead, he simply bowed and entered the center of the mat. Ben-Zvi's strategy was built on the shutdown. He planned to wait for Guro Elias to begin one of his circular dances, then step inside the arc with a powerful forearm block and a simulated throat strike. The Israeli believed that the Filipinos' movements were too wide and too telegraphed to work against a trained Krav Maga practitioner. To Ari, the knife was a tool of terror to be stopped. To Elias, the knife was an extension of the soul to be directed. The duel began with Ben-Zvi moving in with a standard ice pick overhead strike, a high-intensity attack meant to overwhelm the opponent. He expected Elias to try a complex disarm. But what happened next was the first hint of the shock to come. Guro Elias didn't block, he didn't even step back. He utilized the triangular evocation, a footwork pattern that allowed him to pivot 45 degrees while remaining within striking distance. As Ben-Zvi's arm came down, Elias didn't stop the force. He deflected it with the back of his hand, a move known as gunting. In the blink of an eye, the Israeli trainer felt a sharp tap on his bicep and another on his ribs. Guro Elias had cut the muscle and the organs before Ben-Zvi's strike had even finished its downward arc. Ari Ben-Zvi reset, his face flushing with a mix of confusion and irritation. He realized he had underestimated the Filipino's speed, but he still believed that his linear power would eventually land. He changed his tactics to a straight lunge attack, aiming for the abdomen. This is the nightmare strike in self-defense, the hardest to stop because of its directness. Ben-Zvi moved with explosive speed, but Guro Elias practiced the flow of the river. He didn't treat the lunge as a single attack, he treated it as a bridge. As the Israeli's blade hand extended, Elias used a check hand to guide the knife past his hip while simultaneously snaking his other arm around Ben-Zvi's elbow. If you're a true, full-blooded Filipino who carries the spirit of Puso in your chest, show your support and subscribe to this channel right now. Join us to celebrate the profound and often secret influence of Filipino culture on the world stage. The shock began to ripple through the audience as they realized Ben-Zvi was being dissected. Every time the Israeli launched a strike, he found himself trapped in a series of circular deflections. Guro Elias was practicing the destruction of the limb. In FMA, the goal is not just to kill the opponent, but to defang the snake. Every time Ben-Zvi attacked, Elias wasn't aiming for the body, he was aiming for the hand and the arm holding the weapon. The Israeli trainer felt a rhythmic series of taps on his wrist, his forearm, his shoulder. To an observer, it looked like Elias was barely touching him, but to Ben-Zvi, it felt like his arm was being hit by a series of high-velocity hammers. The most critical realization for the Israeli was the acoustic of the blade. In Krav Maga, you are trained to hear the shout of the attack. But the Filipino was whispering. Elias moved with zero tension, his body following a rhythmic flow that made it impossible to predict when the tap would come. He was utilizing bilateral coordination, using both hands independently. While Ben-Zvi was focused on the knife in Elias's right hand, the left hand was already performing a lubud, a push-and-pull maneuver that kept the Israeli off balance and unable to plant his feet for a powerful counterstrike. The force of the Israeli was being eaten by the flow of the Filipino. Ari Ben-Zvi, now desperate to regain his reputation, abandoned all caution and went for a bull rush clinch. He believed that if he could just grab the smaller Filipino man, he could use his superior strength to overwhelm him, a classic grappling solution to a knife problem. He charged forward, arms open to seize Elias's torso. But Guro Elias transformed into the liquid ghost. He dropped his center of gravity and utilized the karambit pivot. As Ben-Zvi's weight came forward, Elias used the Israeli's own momentum to spin him. The audience gasped as they saw the result. In a single fluid motion, Guro Elias had transitioned from the front of the Israeli to his back. He didn't use a chokehold, he used tactile mapping. He held his training knives against the major arteries of Ben-Zvi's neck and thighs. The Israeli trainer was frozen. He had the strength of a soldier and the training of an elite unit, but he was currently a human pincushion. He realized that if those were real blades, he would have been bled out in less than 3 seconds. The ballroom dance he had mocked was actually a surgical map of the human anatomy. The shock for everyone in the room, especially Ben-Zvi, was the infinite continuity of the Filipino style. In Krav Maga, once the strike is over, the technique ends. But for Guro Elias, the end of one move was simply the beginning of the next. He stayed in a constant flow, his blades moving in a figure-8 pattern that created a wall of steel around his body. Ben-Zvi realized that even if he had landed a punch, Elias would have traded that punch for 3 lethal cuts. The Filipino wasn't fighting for self-defense. He was fighting for dominance of the blade. The Israelis' linear stop-block mentality had been completely bypassed by the Filipinos' circular flow reality. The duel ended not with a bang, but with a profound silence. Guro Elias stepped back and bowed, his breathing as calm as if he had just finished a walk in the park. Ari Ben-Zvi stood in the center of the mat, his arms covered in blue training ink cuts, and his ego completely shattered. The result was undeniable. The Israeli elite had been assassinated 30 times over in a 3-minute span. The mocking laughter that had filled the room at the start was gone, replaced by a deep, vibrating respect for the art of the archipelago. Ari Ben-Zvi walked over to Guro Elias and, in front of the entire seminar, bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the mat. "Guro," the Israeli said, his voice reflecting a profound professional shock. "I have spent 20 years training soldiers to stop knives. I thought your art was a show. I thought the flow was a weakness." He looked at the ink-stained sleeves of his tactical shirt. "I was wrong. Your dance is a nightmare. I didn't see the blade until it was already inside my guard. How can a man move that fast without any tension?" Elias smiled and offered the Israeli a hand. "Ari," he said, "your art is for the soldier who fears the knife. Our art is for the man who is the knife." He explained that in the Philippines, the blade is not an attacker to be blocked. It is an energy to be redirected. You try to break the wave with a wall, but the wave will always find a crack. We don't have walls. We have the puso to let the wave pass through us. He told the Israeli that the secret of FMA is not speed, but the absence of resistance. The story of how the Israeli trainer mocked the Filipino practitioner fundamentally shocked everyone in the global martial arts community. It proved that in the world of high-stakes combat, traditional does not mean outdated. The Israeli SBS and Krav Maga instructors learned that the Philippine Kali practitioners are not performers. They are the masters of the red path, a force that can turn the most modern tactical system into a lesson in humility. Guro Elias had proven that Filipino puso is the ultimate blade, sharp enough to cut through even the strongest arrogance. The Filipinos hadn't just won a duel. They had reminded the world that the art of the blade was born in the blood and sweat of the islands.